Way back when I was 6 or 7, I lived in the poorest part of town. My mother, sister, brother, and I all shared a room in the back of an old mobile home that belonged to my grandparents. The neighborhood was old and run down and full of a real cast of characters, but none was more peculiar than the older Russian woman who lived a few streets over. She was heavy-set, with wild black curls and large hips. She was probably in her 50s, but looked in her mid-40s due to the excess weight. Apparently, they had shut down a psychiatric hospital downtown, some questionable behavior by the staff, and that's how she wound up in my neck of the woods. From the way my mother told it, her relatives couldn't stand her, and despite being very wealthy, they put her in our shitty little trailer park. Her grandson brought her groceries on occasion, but otherwise, she was left on her own. On holidays, you could walk by her house and feel the lonely glow of her television. And if you were to pause in your passing, most didn't, you would see her sitting in her empty trailer, chain smoking and looking vacantly at the screen. Needless to say, it was easy to pity the woman. And this is where we made our mistake. My mother is a bleeding heart type, something I also inherited. She is ridiculously empathetic, and of course, this disturbed Russian woman just struck a chord with her. Once my mother was standing outside, puffing a Marlboro, while we played in the background, when she approached her. The other neighbors had warned against getting too friendly, but that only made my dear mom feel even more for the gal. She smiled, the woman smiled back, and asked for a square. Soon, this became a ritual for the two. They would meet on the curb and share a smoke while whining about their day. Then she started coming around when my father would stop in for a visit. He popped in more frequently than that. He's passed away now, but back in the day, my dad was extremely muscular and the most charismatic man that you'd ever meet. He was Korean, tan, and had that cheeky smile you just couldn't deny. He was a mother effer for sure, but somehow charmed his way out of trouble and responsibility till the day he died. This lady quickly became infatuated with my dad. Of course, this infuriated my mom. My father sensed this and began flirting. He liked to piss my mom off like that. As I said, the man was just a son of a bitch. Eventually, this started a ridiculous rivalry between the two women. Before, she wasn't really all that bad. A little bit strange, but fine as long as she was on her meds. I can't tell you what exactly was up with her, but she was a flaming nut. She would come stand outside her house and holler obscenities directed toward my mom. My grandfather, being the arrogant military man that he was, would come outside. He would call her a cunt and tell her to get the heck out. Pardon the language, but there really is no other way to put it. Apparently, the lady got it in her head that she should stop taking her prescriptions. She tended to babble to herself while walking in the neighborhood, offer us candy. We were by no means allowed to accept, and would stand outside of our bathroom window to try and get a peek at my pops. That still messes with me to this day. She also started accusing my grandpa of being a man in black, a murderer, and claimed he was driving an ice cream truck and selling coke to children, which gave the law enforcement quite the laugh. Although she harassed us, the police wouldn't do anything to her, and she never actually assaulted us. Until the day my teenage cousin and I decided to meet my sister at her bus stop. It was at the front of our neighborhood, and we had to pass her house on the way. She was standing outside and tried to offer us food. We ignored her as she would often go into a rant about my whore mother and her drug-pushing father. It was sunny out and I continued on with my cousin. Suddenly, we hear loud footsteps beating the pavement. As we turn, we can hear her running toward us. Because it was so bright, we didn't first realize the danger that was approaching. She had one arm raised toward the sun, and as I squinted, it dawned on me that she had found herself a rusty old machete and was loudly making her way into our direction. Terrified, I looked at my cousin. For a moment, we stared at one another frozen. We might have just stayed there had the loon not done what she did next. I have never heard such a screech in my life. It was animalistic and deep. She let out a horrific battle cry, and that kicked us in the ass and got us running. While terrified, I assumed we would lose her in between the trailers. After all, she was out of shape and smoked like a chimney. But today she was determined. We bolted and zigzagged, yet somehow she had gotten ahead and confronted us 2 trailers in front of my own. There was nothing but one of those cheap plastic pools between life and death, it seemed. She looked wild and my eyes locked on her. They appeared to see more clearly than they'd ever had before, even without my glasses. Her hair was a tangled mess that covered her face. She was panting heavily now, her weighty chest heaving up and down. Although most of her face was covered, I could see a bit of drool running down her mouth, and she held her blade firmly at her side. I was convinced she was not human at all, but demonic. I screamed, not the monstrous shriek she'd let loose, but that of a child who had just seen the boogeyman. I felt tears running down my face, adding to my heated cheeks. I thought I was about to be decapitated. She suddenly smiled, and that was it for me. All I recall is falling forward. I woke up minutes later soaked. My cousin said it was just because I had fallen to the waiting pool, but I'm certain that I urinated on myself. By then she was gone and the owner of the yard we stood in had come out. I guess he had a bat, and once confronted by someone her own size, she dipped. He'd called the authorities, and yet they didn't so much as arrest her, only made her take her medication. They said it was all they could do, as well as confiscate the machete. We stayed with my aunt for a while, and she continued to harass my grandparents until the day they moved out. Nowadays I forget her real name, but we always refer to her as Machete Maggie. Some fun trivia here. As a teenager, I broke into the old asylum they say she came from. It was a trip, but no rooms were marked Machete Maggie. I'd just gotten out of a long-term relationship when all of this happened. A guy that I'll call Ryan messaged me on a dating app. We had briefly talked online for years before because we had mutual friends, but we'd never actually met. While I was dating my ex, Ryan would constantly like every single Instagram story I posted. And whenever I picked my boyfriend up from college, I would notice Ryan staring at me from across campus. After my breakup, I figured one date wouldn't hurt. I wasn't genuinely interested in him, but I wanted a reason to get out of the house and move on. We agreed to go see a movie. Ryan offered to pick me up and take me to dinner first. The theater was less than 2 minutes from my apartment, and we had mutual friends, so I didn't think getting into his car was a big deal. 5 minutes before the movie was supposed to start, I still hadn't heard from him all day. Then he texted me saying he accidentally fell asleep and was on his way. One important detail. I'd never given him my address. I waited for him at a public spot near my apartment, and there was no way he could have seen which building I came out of. The second I got into his car, I felt a strange sensation of dread. He could barely put a sentence together. During the less than 2-minute drive to the theater, he almost crashed the car several times. I brushed it off, assuming that he was anxious. Things only got stranger. Until the movie actually started, I was the only one talking. Ryan barely said anything. He didn't ask me a single question about myself. He mostly just stared at me. I kept trying to convince myself he was simply socially awkward. Still, I had this overwhelming feeling that something wasn't right. It wasn't about anything specific. I just felt incredibly uncomfortable. I told myself I was probably just nervous because I don't usually go on dates. By then, I'd already decided there definitely wasn't going to be a second date. At least I could enjoy the movie I'd been looking forward to seeing. About 20 minutes into the movie, Ryan started putting his hand on my thigh. I quietly moved it away. A minute later, he did it again. I moved farther away in my seat. At that point, I started panicking because I knew if I even looked at him, he would try to kiss me, so I stood up and said I needed to use the bathroom. I never actually went to the bathroom. I actually ran out of the theater in heels in the middle of the night and went home. Once I got home, I realized disappearing without saying anything probably wasn't the best idea. I texted Ron saying I had suddenly gotten sick, felt embarrassed, and went home. I planned to come up with a better explanation the next day, so I went to sleep. The next morning, I woke up to around 50 messages sent overnight. He'd sent me selfies of himself sitting alone in the theater, selfies of him driving home, selfies of him lying in bed. Nothing explicit, just photo after photo of his completely serious face. At that point, I decided I didn't know him anything. I apologized for leaving so abruptly and told him I didn't think we were a good match, so I wasn't interested in seeing each other again, and blocked him. A few weeks later, I went to visit my mom, who lives in another city. While I was there, the concierge at my apartment building messaged me saying somebody had left a package for me. The problem was I hadn't ordered anything. They sent me a picture. Inside a paper bag was one tiny cookie and a handwritten note saying it had originally been meant to be delivered to me at my university, but that didn't work out. The concierge also told me the person who dropped it off was wearing a hoodie, refused to give their name, and ran away immediately afterward. I didn't connect it to Ryan because, again, I had never told him where I lived. About a month later, I got a message from a girl I'd never met. I'll call her Emily. She introduced herself as Ryan's cousin and said they attended the same university campus as I did. Emily explained that Ryan had been devastated ever since I disappeared from the date. She said that he'd begged her to deliver the cookie to me at school, but because I hadn't been there that day, she ended up taking it to my apartment building instead. Then she sent me a picture of a letter she'd accidentally forgotten to include with the cookie. The letter started by saying that he had a premonition that I would love the gift. The movie we'd gone to see was Final Destination 6. Then it got much worse. He wrote that he'd been in love with me ever since the very first time we'd exchanged messages years earlier. He said he'd ruined the opportunity I'd given him, that he was heartbroken, and begged for a second chance so he could understand what he'd done wrong. I didn't respond and I blocked Emily too. That should have been the end of it. For the rest of that year, different friends of Ryan kept messaging me. Every single one of them told me how depressed he was and begged me to just talk to him one more time. I replied to a few of them asking them to stop contacting me because it was becoming genuinely frightening. Then one day, as I was leaving my building, I saw Ryan's car parked right outside. He was sitting inside looking at his phone. Thankfully, I was already in my own car and he never saw me. The next time one of his friends contacted me, I sent a long message saying that if Ryan or any of his friends contacted me again, left anything in my address again, or showed up outside of my apartment, I would report him to the police for stalking. I even cited the relevant laws and explained that anyone helping him continue contacting me could be also held legally responsible. The friend immediately apologized. Not long afterward, I moved. I never heard from Ryan again. Even now, I still have no idea how he figured out where I lived. I never gave him my address, never told him which building was mine, and as far as I know, there was no legitimate way for him to find it. I even stopped going to the spot where he picked me up from. That's probably the part that still unsettles me the most. Sometimes I also wonder whether the day I happened to see his car outside my apartment was actually the first time he had been there, or just the first time I noticed him. I honestly hope I'll never know. Sorry if my spelling is off from the start as I'm on my phone. So basically, my boyfriend and I live in a flat together and he's an area manager for a main chain restaurant in England. His job takes him to at least 5 to 8 stores and sometimes has to stay late. Sometimes he doesn't get in until 3 a.m, so I usually sort of wake up for him to make sure he's alright. If he wants me to run a hot bath for him and wants a coffee or anything. So I get the usual phone call from him saying, "I'm on my way home. I'll be home in about an hour. Can you start running a bath for me when I'm close, please?" I say sure and hang up. Now, our block of flats has this security door that always gets locked at 10 p.m. and as long as you have a main entry key, you are free to come and go without worrying about the door. I'm nestling down to watch some Netflix and have a cup of tea and a cheeky biscuit when I hear our buzzer to our flat go off. Now someone outside the main entrance is pressing my number and I have to press a switch from inside my flat that will open the main security door and let them in. It's probably someone who's forgotten their key and pressed my number quickly. I try and shrug it off. I pause the film I'm watching and wait. The buzzer rings again, stops, then rings again. It sounds like someone's deliberately putting their finger on it and holding it down. Now, our flat is on the 2nd floor, and from our bedroom we can look down and see who's at the main gate. I jump up, go into that room, and slowly peek to see who's there. I saw 5 well-built, stocky guys. This is 2 a.m. What the heck are they doing here? Why are they ringing my buzzer? It suddenly becomes clear to me that whoever it is clearly doesn't have a key, so they mustn't live here. While peeking at them, I clearly see the front guy put his hand up and just press my buzzer. flat number 4. He's not even touching the other buttons, just mine. Half of me wants to pick my flat phone up and be like, seriously, get lost. I don't know what you want, but I will call the police. And then the other half of me doesn't want to give away that I'm a girl. It sounds silly, but I'm 23 and quite small. I grab my phone and ring my boyfriend straight away. He says something like he's 45 minutes away and will be there as soon as possible, but he will call his dad, Luke, who's a policeman, to come over and wait with me. While I'm on the phone, the buzzer is still going. He tells me to just keep peeking at them and try and see if I can see any distinguishing features. After what seemed like ages, my boyfriend's dad turns up and I see him walk straight up to the guys and start a conversation. My boyfriend's dad already had a security key. We gave him the keys in case we were ever locked out, and he opens the door to my flat. Straight away, he runs over to me and makes sure I'm fine. We're sitting down having a cup of tea, and I ask what was said and what happened. He says he walked up to the main door, and the conversation went like this. Group of guys. Hey man, do you live here? Do you think you could let us in? Luke. Well, clearly, if you don't have a key, you don't live here, so no. Who are you supposed to be seeing? Well, you see, my main girl lives in number 4, man, and she's going to sleep, so you know how late it is. These are my friends and they don't have anywhere to stay and I haven't got my key, so how about you just let us in? That's funny because my daughter lives there. Oh yeah? Shit, man, well, how about letting us in and we can see her together? Right. Now, I don't know what you're planning to do, but seriously stay the heck away from these flats. You clearly don't live here. If you ever come back here, I will personally arrest each and every one of you wankers. Now screw off and go home because I swear to you, I will beat the shit out of you guys so bad that nobody would ever recognize you. With that, the group of guys took off and Luke managed to open the door freely and get inside. I told you guys my town was a breeding ground for crazies. So I used to perform weekly for about a year or so, singing with my friend who was a guitarist at this cute little cafe down by the beach. My anxiety had gotten pretty bad by the end of last year, so I haven't been back since, but that's not really relevant. There was a guy there who played the piano, who I'll name Elliot. You'll soon see why. I've never really talked to him too much, as the cafe was always busy and despite being very, very small, it was always packed to the brim. Due to this, people generally tended to stay with their groups of friends, as it's quite hard to circulate and speak to people, except to congratulate performers. He stuck out like a sore thumb, as he had one of those stupid haircuts that are shaved all the way around, except for a long Ponzi bit on top. He also frequently wore fedoras and full 3-piece suits, even in the height of summer. One day I got talking to him, as he frequented the place so often and we now had many friends in common. He wasn't from here and had a very thick, posh accent. His parents were rich and he had inherited a large sum of money from a grandparent that had recently passed away. He seemed like a nice guy, so I didn't mind his company. He appeared to me to be the only one of my lady types, which I didn't care for, but he was now a friend, so why would that bother me? We all always went out after the cafe closed to a bar in the center of town that also held their own busker nights. So after getting drunk and playing at the cafe, we would get more drunk and play there. As we were there so often, the bar would sometimes have a lock-in and we would all be sitting around playing songs and drinking. It was pretty nice actually. One of these nights we were hitting it off, but not, I thought, in a romantic sense. He told me that he thought we should just hang out together with the others and get to know each other. A friendly offer from a friend. I thought so, I agreed. He messaged me the next day and asked if I still wanted to hang out, and I said sure. Why not? He came over that Thursday with a bouquet of roses, a 3-piece suit, fedora, and, I crap you not, a pocket watch. Thought it was nice that he brought flowers, but I hoped so badly that he didn't think this was what I thought he thought it was. He thought it was. He took me to a restaurant. I thought we were going to a bar, and paid for dinner. Though I insisted I pay for my own, he wouldn't let me. We went to a buskers night my friend was hosting, and I sang, then we got a cab into town to go to the clubs. You could tell very quickly that he probably had never been in this kind of environment before. He was awkward and looked uncomfortable, but made the effort to have a good time. I was just wilding out, dancing, bumping into friends, having a good time. Then during that one song called I Love It, he taps me on the shoulder and says, "Kiss me," in this awkward posh boy voice. I didn't know what to do, so I just pretended I didn't hear him. We went outside to smoke and go to the next bar, and he was telling everyone, "This is my date." Yeah, this is P, my date. People he didn't even know. It was awkward as heck, and I didn't know what to say to him. Stupidly, I brushed it off and we continued our night. I bumped into some of my friends who own a tattoo shop, so we decided to go back there, have a few more drinks, and I got some pretty shitty but pretty cute little tattoos. It's a habit of mine, and I should probably stop. He passed out on the couch, and at about 5 a.m., I called it quits and went home in a cab. He jumped in and went home after me. The next day, he asked if I wanted to go out again to this bar, that honestly I do really love because they play some awesome music, but I just palmed him off and told him that sorry, thanks for the offer, but I'm broke. He offered to pay for my night. I told him I couldn't even afford travel there, and he offered to pay for that too. I didn't go. About a week later, I was back at the cafe when one of my friends asked me, "Oh, where's your boyfriend?" I laughed it off like, "Oh, haha. My friends are ribbing me because I and Elliot hung out." My other friend informed me that in fact, no, he had been there every day that week telling everyone that P is my girlfriend. He went on a date. I was mortified and told her that in no uncertain terms was I his girlfriend and that we had ever dated. It had been my birthday a few days before, and he turns up with 4 gift bags, filled to the brim with presents. T-shirts of my favorite TV show, jewelry, no diamonds thankfully, dresses, gift vouchers, you name it. What the heck, right? I told him that I couldn't take them, and he told me there was no way he could return them, but I reiterated that I'm sorry, I just can't accept them. He got pretty upset, but I don't know what he was expecting. I began distancing myself from him very quickly, and 2 weeks later I hadn't spoken to him at all, but received several messages and texts a day, asking what I was up to and if I wanted to hang out. I didn't reply. He then started posting on his Facebook that I see girls out partying and they always go for the douchebag guys. Then they cry when they get hurt. Why can't they just take a chance on a gentleman? As the weeks went on, they got progressively more and more irate and more scary. He changed his profile picture of himself, in his fedora, looking into the distance, holding a dead pheasant in one hand and a hunting rifle in the other. I freaked. I began seeing his car driving past my house several times a day. Yet, he knew nobody in my area. I'm pretty out of the way, and he lived about 40 minutes from my house. He knocked on the door a few times, and luckily I wasn't in, and my brother told him to get lost. Roses started turning up at my doorstep with little notes like, "I see you," "Playing hard to get," and "I'm waiting." I was officially freaked and pretty scared. He'd amped up the woe is me, Elliot Roger manifesto-esque Facebook posts and texts. In the end, I had to tell him to please leave me alone. I never dated you, I'm not your girlfriend, and I'm not going to be. Stop leaving stuff in my house, which he denied. Stop driving by, calling, and texting. In all fairness to him, while he continued to do so, they were way less frequent till eventually he stopped. He had moved back home for the summer of last year, on a break from college, so going to the cafe wasn't a problem. Then he returns. I had a boyfriend at the time. Another jerk. There are some pretty gruesome stories about him and his mom, which I can't wait to share to get an opinion on. And it was his first time there, seeing me sing and meeting my friends. It was uncharacteristically quiet at the cafe, so there were plenty of empty tables and only a few of my friends there, who were at a table of their own. Elliot turned up on his own and just sat at our table. He introduced himself to my boyfriend and just sat smiling at us. Awkward. I had told my boyfriend about him previously, but I don't think he made the connection, and I didn't really have an opportunity that night to tell him. I got up to go to the bathroom, then went for a smoke. Elliot followed me out after I was done in the bathroom and offered me a cigarette, despite the fact that I was already smoking. I declined, then became acutely aware that we were the only ones outside. Great. My parents split up this summer. She cheated on him again. Oh. I didn't know what to say, so I just said sorry. We made small talk and I went inside. My boyfriend was furious, asking me why the heck I hadn't told him that I'd been engaged. I asked him what the heck he was talking about because I never have, but even if I had, why would I bring that up? What relevance is it to anything? He told him that Elliot had told him that we had been engaged for about 6 weeks before he broke up with me because I was too clingy, jealous, and possessive. But it's so great that we can still hang out all the time and go places together without it being awkward. I hadn't even been on a date with him and hadn't seen him since May. This was September. My anxiety coincided with this, so I haven't been back, but it has nothing to do with him. I told him to screw off, stop lying about me, and keep my name out of his mouth. Luckily, I haven't heard from him since the beginning of this year. Hey, long time no talk. You still owe me a dinner, cheeky. No response. It freaks me out to think about, especially as every so often he adds pictures on his Facebook of his new kills when he goes hunting. I abhor hunting. His new guns and his new hunting knives every time he buys one, which seems to be often. I don't have him on Facebook, but out of curiosity, I'll have a sneaky look because I seem to have a sickness where I can't help sneaking a peek at the profiles of people I don't like. So that's that. Again, I haven't been back to the cafe in a long time, almost a year, and I'm now itching to get back to performing. So maybe in a month or so, I'll have another story for y'all. I still remember this story incredibly clearly, even though it happened over a decade ago. Strangely, everything that happened after it almost is a complete blur. But I can picture every detail leading up to it and the moment it happened. This happened when I was around 10 or 11. I'll also be using fake names for privacy. I was there with my friends Daniel and Lydia, who were both around 12 years old. I can't remember exactly which beach it was, but it was either Coogee Beach or another beach very close by. Lydia's mom drove us to the beach. She would usually just sit and tan on the sand, and we would go off to do our own thing and have fun. We decided to play hide and seek around the beach, park, and surrounding walkways. Daniel was seeking and found me first, but neither of us could find Lydia. We searched everywhere: the beach, the nearby playground, and around the paths. Facing north, there were stairs leading up from the beach to a walking path that followed the coastline, overlooking the ocean and cliffs, as well as a small patch of bushland in the middle. We decided to head up the stairs and walk the entire path around to the other side, before climbing over a fence into the bush to have a better look. About 5 minutes in, we came across what looked like a campsite. We saw a filthy tent, a sleeping bag hanging out of the zipper, a non-lit campfire, and empty bean cans scattered around the floor. We both immediately felt uneasy. Something about it didn't feel right. Without saying much, we decided to walk away from the tent and cut through the bush to get near the stairs we came from. Daniel was walking behind me as we made our way through the bush. Then suddenly, in the most stern voice I'd ever heard from him, he said, "Run." I didn't ask why, and I didn't look back. Daniel was running behind me the whole time. Looking back now, I know he would have been much faster than me, but he stayed behind me the entire way. I sometimes wonder if he was doing that to make sure I didn't fall back behind. Whatever was happening, neither of us cared about anything except getting out of there. We reached the fence. It was probably about 4 feet high. For reference, I'm only 5'1" as an adult, so I would have been around the height of the fence, or maybe shorter. We both leaped over with no issues, though. The second we landed on the other side, we looked back. Standing inside the bush was a homeless man, maybe in his late 40s. With a long gray and white beard, a dirty brown beanie, and worn ragged clothes. In one hand he was holding a knife. With his other, he kept motioning for us to come back, quietly saying, "Come here, come here." We ran the entire way down the path until we found Lydia and her mom. From memory we told them, but I don't think anything was done about the situation. I'm not sure if Lydia's mom told our parents or even reported it. If I'm being honest, I can't remember if I told my parents or if Daniel told his. It became one of those experiences we just never spoke about again. From how I saw the situation at that age, I kind of just shrugged it off. We all kept in touch for a few years after the incident, but eventually lost contact after I moved to a different state. Lately, I wonder about it more. What could have gone differently? I still wonder what Daniel saw before he yelled for us to run. What I do know is that if Daniel hadn't been there that day, I probably wouldn't be here today telling this story. I count my lucky stars every day that Daniel was with me. My middle school, high school, and college are all walking distance from my home. I live in a beautiful Victorian neighborhood, and despite our excellent public transport, I've always enjoyed the short walk from campus to home on nice days. When I was 14, I was walking home alone on a pretty fall day. Most of the neighborhood is packed with houses, people driving, doing lawn work, etc., so it's pretty safe. But there's a small stretch of street that goes past an abandoned factory and is generally deserted, except for the occasional homeless person or someone waiting for a bus. I generally avoid this part of the neighborhood, but it was late afternoon, and halfway through my walk, the sun disappeared behind the clouds and it became quite cold. Thus, I figured I'd take the sketchy warehouse street, as it wasn't that long and it would get me home faster. The whole time I've been walking, there's been a guy about 30 feet behind me. This isn't uncommon. Like I said, I live near 3 schools all on the same street, and a lot of students are walking home in the afternoon. But this guy isn't a student. It's obvious. No backpack, very dirty clothes, and just a downright crazy look in his eyes. Alright, all the more reason to take the shortcut and get away from this dude. So I turn onto the sketchy street. I'm halfway past the warehouse when I look over my shoulder, and this guy is now less than 10 feet behind me. It's also worth noting that there's nothing over this way. We've passed the bus stop, all the restaurants and little shops are 2 streets over. This guy is either going to his house, unlikely based on his clothes, or he is following me to mine. There is no other reason to be going this way. So I pick up the pace. I look back. He's picked up the pace. Okay, shit. There's nobody around. I do have some mace, but I'd have to dig it out to get out of my bag. And no way in heck am I slowing down now. It's a really quiet street. No cars going by or anything. An idea dawns on me and I pull out my phone. As loudly as I can say. Ah yes, is Officer my last name in? Sure, I'll hold. Hi Dad, yeah, I'm getting out of class. I was thinking of picking up a pizza and wondered if any of the guys at the station wanted some. I can. I look back and this dude is sprinting away from me like his life depends on it. I guess he figured mugging, assaulting, or abducting a police officer's daughter wasn't a good idea. My heart was pounding. I turned the corner around the warehouse and started sprinting myself, not stopping until I reached my front door and deadbolted that shit. I never take that sketchy street anymore, no matter how cold it is. And no, my dad's not a cop. Hey everyone, this is my first post on Reddit. I hope this is the right subreddit to submit my story to. I have to preface that English is not my first language, so apologies for any mistakes in this text going forward. With that said, strap in because it's going to be a long post, I think. So, where to even begin? In my country, the government decided to push free professional classes to anyone who's either benefiting from welfare or just unemployed. I, 30 female, decided to enroll in one of these classes before moving to another state next year, just to have something more on my CV and to have an excuse to touch grass since I'm unemployed. And I specifically picked a social media marketing and management formation that started 3 months ago. Everything was great about it, and it seemed to me that all my classmates and professors were great people. I even started to make some friends. I must point out that nobody in my class is underage, the youngest being 21 and the oldest 56. After a couple of weeks of classes, they introduced us to the main curriculum of the whole course that will involve a month-long group project among students. The project consists of inventing a brand from the ground up and marketing it on social media as if it were a real thing about to launch on the market. I was super excited about this and couldn't wait to face this challenge. They picked the groups at random, and the RNG people chose for me to be paired with the 56-year-old woman that we'll call her M, that barely spoke to anyone up until that point. Thinking that she was nothing but a nice lady, I tried to accommodate her for any preferences that she would have on the project, such as choosing what the topic would be about. She immediately starts telling me half of her life story just out of nowhere, and focuses particularly on a skin issue that she had that she claimed doctors only made worse, and how she cured herself with herbs and essential oils. In hindsight, this was already the first red flag. Her rambling just left me scratching my head. And just to break the awkward silence, I said we could pick that as a brand idea. Natural remedies, food supplements, and cosmetics brands that are not some MLM or a cult. And she immediately agreed and smiled like a little girl, which back then made me kind of happy. After that, she picked the name idea for logo and motto without asking me for an opinion, saying it felt important to her. Put a pin in this for later, and that since I had no experience with this niche, I should learn from her. She insisted so much that I had to comply, and that's when the horrible stuff started for me. She would call and message me on WhatsApp constantly, insisting to see me work in real time on the designs, logos, mock-ups, etc., because she needed to supervise my actions. Her excuse being, I'm a little girl that hasn't known the world yet. She never liked any of my works and forced me to redo things over and over. I'm on the spectrum and I have a very hard time setting boundaries with people or dealing with the idea of displeasing someone, so I kept pushing myself to stay strong and keep going because I couldn't deal with how this woman would have reacted to anything that she might have seen as insubordination. On top of the fact that I didn't want to fail the course, and from the beginning of all of our professors insisted the group project was vital to the final score. It's in one of those calls that she starts telling me some of the most unhinged stuff I've ever heard in my entire life. After seeing me drink a sip of an energy drink, she screamed at me to toss that garbage away, then explained to me the reason why. In her opinion, energy drinks, sodas, and junk food are infested with nanomachines that infect the human body and rewrite their DNA. She then explains that's because the great powers are not aliens like most think, but androids and AI hive minds, ready to enslave humanity through biomechanical control. She also keeps going on about how AIs have existed since before 2,000 years ago, came from an ancient civilization before the Great Reset, and that all great men in history were actually androids or giants. She did go on a great tangent about Nephilim and such. She also threw in the fact that she's sure dinosaurs are nothing but a fairy tale and could have never existed. So in her opinion, big people can exist, but big birds can't. The first incident, the biggest one, happened last month. On one weekend evening where instead of slaving away for her, I went out with my mom to visit some friends and was back home the next morning. I forgot my phone at home and realized it too late, but since Em and I hadn't agreed to work that night, I thought nothing of it. Oh man, was I naive. My phone was blown up with messages and phone calls, all from Em except a couple of messages from other classmates of mine that told me she had called him obsessively with demands of him showing up at my front door to make sure I was okay. He had mentioned before we live on the same block. Later that week, I got called into the school administration because Em apparently had called them too and told them that I had gone missing for 3 to 4 days. I tried in vain to keep it together and just bursted into tears in front of the secretaries, telling and showing them all this woman was putting me through, explaining my boundary setting issues, and they decided to immediately inform the professors and find a solution that would have allowed me to not have any more contacts with her. But before they could take any actions, I and Em were informed one more student was going to join our group. We'll call him T. Nothing much to say about him. He was super nice and did help out that following week by not complying with Em's demands and unreasonable standards, insisting that I also take time off to do my own things too. For some reason, she never bitched about decisions made by T. In my last call with Em and T, Em goes on another unhinged rant, and this one will be relevant later, and it's what makes this story so messed up on multiple levels. She claimed that she was being gang-stalked and sabotaged by Big Pharma because she had invented a miracle ointment that could reconstruct any sort of biological tissue. She said she tested it on the hand of a friend of hers that had third-degree burns, claiming she saw the nerves, tendons, muscles, and skin grow back, saving the hands. She then added that a prototype of said ointment, that mostly consisted of garlic and aloe, cured her husband from cancer a few years back. She also added like how after an accident over a decade ago, the doctors decided to sabotage her uterus during an emergency surgery to prevent her from having children. More of the big pharma sabotages involve several lawsuits she was involved in. She concluded that she's taking SMM classes with us because she wants to learn how to communicate with social media and the new generations. I'm personally afraid that she's going to try and scam desperate people into buying her BS garlic and aloe miracle cure. The second incident happened the next day before class. A friend decided to sit next to me since that class of the day wasn't going to involve the group projects. We put our stuff on the desk and, since we were early, decided to go into the next room to get a coffee. M comes in and we hear a commotion in the classroom. When we peek inside, we see her tossing my friend's stuff to another desk. My friend asked what the heck she was doing, and M just coldly responded, "The seat next to OP is mine." I nodded at my friend as if to say, "It's okay," to try and defuse the situation before it escalated. 2 days later, we get informed that I was swapped from M's group to another. I will say that finally I'm working with the girl I made friends with, and we're having a lot of good fun. So, well, I thought it was over. No more of M's weird stuff, right? The calls and messages from her never ended. Actually, she started obsessively calling the school and the professors as well to protest about the decision of removing me from her group. Her texts were filled with weird trivial questions about random topics or very personal questions. Up to 50 to 60 texts per day. At this point, I stopped responding almost entirely to her and started screenshotting everything she was sending me. This leads us to the third and last incident, at least so far, that happened last week. I can't go too much into detail because it involves geopolitical beliefs and I really don't want to warrant comments. The short, clean version of events is M in class asks the professor a question that involved a very important global matter. He replied and then asked us about our own opinion. 2 people spoke before I did, giving examples of people or brands getting cancelled for sharing political stances unwisely and how a problematic or controversial history or presence on social media might impact negatively one's chances of employment. It was only once I was back home that I realized M had sent me several rage-filled texts, claiming I was incredibly rude to have answered her instead of letting the professor answer, and that she was expecting my apologies. I wrote a long text to her explaining myself, told her I would not apologize since I had done nothing wrong, and finally blocked the number. She thankfully hasn't been able to find me on social media yet, but I don't use my real name online. Since then, she's been missing all classes, which is nice because I really didn't want her to try and confront me in person. But it's what I've learned today from one of my classmates during break that left me horrified and pushed me to write this post. One of my classmates, we'll call her Y, told me M and she had been exchanging texts from time to time, mostly because Y took pity on M, thinking like I did at first she was just some weird old and lonely lady. In one batch of texts, she goes into detail about her husband who had passed away from cancer a few years back. Some of the text read, "We fought tooth and nail, but they took him away from me anyway. I was so close to keeping him with me. At least I know he trusted and followed me until the end." These are verbatim because after putting 2 and 2 together, Y and I figured out she's either delusional and lying about everything, or she tried to cure her husband from cancer with her ointment instead of traditional medicine, which effectively probably killed him. Also, we found out that she's already selling her services inside of a spa belonging to a relative of hers, using the name she picked for our project. She's also been using my work for her personal social media pages involving her services, which explains why she was so obsessive about supervising my work. She was basically getting free commissions out of me. Today was my last day of class before Xmas holidays, and after that, it's just going to be 3 more months until classes are over. I don't know where this story will lead me further, but honestly, I hope she never shows up to class ever again. I'm really hoping to not have to come back with more updates. Update 1. So, I don't even know where to begin. I will have to leave out some details because she went too far with one of my classmates. All I can say is that her actions affected a minor, and M has been reported to the police by the person in question. But it seems the police haven't taken the situation seriously, despite it being pretty damn serious. She apparently isn't new to this kind of behavior since she has had multiple convictions in her life and some restraining orders against her, but in my country, those are barely ever enforced. As far as her actions against me, I have been successfully ignoring her, although I feel she's trying her best to upset me in class, just to get a reaction out of me or something, like purposefully sitting behind me and making tapping, humming, and loud comments, often, which was something she never did before. I think she might have caught on to the fact that I'm uncomfortable around overstimulating noises, and unfortunately I'm forbidden from wearing my noise-canceling headphones in class. Ever since I blocked her, I've also been receiving multiple mute phone calls from unknown or unregistered phone numbers. The same goes for T, who also had to complain to the school administration to have him change groups to stay away from him. In the meantime, she went on to harass almost everyone in class. One day in between classes, I went out with a handful of classmates to get something to eat in a pub, and that's when we told each other our stories of our encounters with her. One of them in particular disturbed me, which is the one I don't feel comfortable talking about because, as mentioned before, it involves a minor. Another peculiar account is one where she emotionally blackmailed a guy in my class to stay with her at the bus stop for 2 hours, all the while she was telling him some crazy religious stuff. Then she proceeds to explain that she knows this is all true because she has seen evil with her own very eyes, such as people walking or crawling onto walls and ceilings, and if you're into JJK like me, you'll understand why this one tale in particular had me holding my stomach for a straight minute. A 3-meter tall man with 4 arms tried to kill her in the middle of the night outside her home. Overall, she has been changing her backstory a lot depending on who she spoke to. One time she had kids taken away from CPS, to others she said she can't have kids like she did with me, and then she keeps killing and resurrecting her husband in various stories. When we were done exchanging experiences, we all felt very uncomfortable, knowing we all complained to the school administration for 2 months, and no action had been taken whatsoever, except small things that didn't quite solve the issue. The course ends in 1 month. Back in December, I couldn't anticipate how far she would go. Now, I'm quite afraid of what she might push out of her system just to get some last bit of attention. I thought she had latched just onto me because she saw me as weak, but apparently, this person is actually just dangerous and unhinged towards everyone. I wish I could feel terrible for her because she's obviously suffering from some serious mental illness that surely involves some degree of hallucinations and surely huge delusions. A little background for you guys. My dad and I have never really seen eye to eye. Not in an abusive manner or anything of those sorts, but we clash to the point where an argument can erupt within a matter of minutes between us. My mom usually says there is no doubt that I'm his daughter. Anyways, this goes back to when I was around 17 or 18. We live in an okay town in the northeast of England. My town is literally divided by one main road which separates the quiet family houses on one side and the drug-fueled abusive families on the other. You know the kind. The ones that have far too many children just for the sake of the money from the government, and yet they spend it on more alcohol than necessary. Well, one night I was planning to spend the night at my friend's house, Sean and Josh. They were like brothers in a lot of ways. We would just spend our nights playing games that would make us sick with nostalgia. Such good times. The only thing was that they lived off one of the worst roads in town. My dad would usually drop me off on the night, and walking home the next morning was a breeze. Everybody around there was in bed hungover usually. The night it got to be about 2 a.m., and I genuinely didn't feel very well. All I really wanted was my own bed. So I called my dad to see if he could come get me. I knew he was up. He spent many nights fishing, which usually meant that he'd be home any time between 1 a.m. and 6 a.m. So my dad says to me that he'll walk over and bring our 2 big dogs with him, because the car is still full of his fishing equipment and it would be a while before he could drive over. He explains to me that he'll call me back in a few minutes after he puts the leads on the dogs, and to let me know when to set off. After about 20 minutes, there is still no call from my dad, so I figured he's most likely left his phone at home and he's already waiting at the corner of the street for me. No big deal, I'll set off. So Sean and Josh are half asleep, but they keep saying, "We don't mind walking you. Honestly, it's fine." All of that said in between yawns. I let them know that I'll be fine. It's only 2 minutes up one road. I pop my shoes on, grab my bag, and head out. As I was walking, I was trying to untangle my headphones because that takes anyone a good 10 minutes to do. Just as I was getting them untangled, something in my head is like, "Don't bother." I had this weird feeling, so I rounded the corner to the long road that leads home. This road is the awful road that I mentioned earlier. Off of this road are a lot of long streets where the not so nice people live. Not all of them are horrible, of course, but a lot of them are, is my point. I passed one particular street and noticed a group of men down at the bottom, drunk or possibly on who knows what, all shouting at each other. But yet again, they were quite far away, so I didn't get worried. About halfway up this long road, I could see the corner where my dad was supposed to be at this point. I heard panting and running behind me. My whole body tensed up, and my immediate reaction was to grab my bag as tightly as possible, assuming whoever it was going to run past and take it. But a few feet behind me, the running slowed to a walk. Suddenly, I heard a drunken man's voice behind me saying, "Where are you going?" Obviously, I was startled and just replied with a quiet, "Home." I didn't really want to look at him and walked a bit faster. He started getting agitated with me and started shouting at me. "What are you scared of? I'm walking you home." So I tried to keep calm and was sneaking my phone out of my pocket to call my dad, who was still nowhere in sight. I told him, "I'm not frightened, I'm just not very well. It's okay about walking me home. My dad's around the corner. Can you hear the dogs?" And I tried to laugh it off a little so as to calm the situation. The next thing I know, this guy is dragging me behind an old police station. An abandoned police station, saying the most disgusting things to me, which really turns my stomach thinking about. I have no idea how, but I managed to kind of squeeze through his grip and ran as fast as my legs would carry me. I phoned my dad, and my dad hadn't even set off yet. I could hear him running, and he kept telling me to stay on the line, that he'd be there soon. I could hear this guy catching up behind me when I saw my dad. I have never felt such relief in all of my life. My dad wrapped his arms around me, then held me by the shoulders, and I could see it in his eyes. He thought he would never see me again. Obviously, the cheeky little man disappeared within seconds. My dad walked me home as I tried to choke out what had happened, and he consoled me until we reached the front door. When we got to the house, he started putting on his gloves and his coat and putting the leads on the dogs. I stood there red-eyed and asked him where he was going. His reply was very short and simple. "I'm taking the dogs for a walk." By this point, it was around 3 a.m. because it's obviously normal to walk the dogs at this time. I was worried, but seeing as though my dad was taking 2 German Shepherd crosses with him, I felt a bit more relaxed. So Dad goes out, and about half an hour later, comes back with a big smile on his face. I went into the kitchen, and my dad was standing at the sink washing his hands. He turns to me and says, "Are you all right, darling?" Still cheery as ever. I said very simply to him, "What have you done?" He replies with, "This guy. Didn't he happen to have a cigarette behind his ear? With beige trousers on?" I remembered the trousers, but not the cigarette. My dad then looks at me and says, "Well, the cigarettes are not there anymore." I start to get a bit confused, and I stammered out, Wait, you found him?" At this point, the concern came back into his face. He explained to me that when he found him, he was standing on that same corner that he attacked me at. Like he was waiting for another young, naive girl to be walking by to do it to her too. In the end, my dad showed me his bloody knuckles and very calmly said, "Just don't tell your mom." So, as the name may entail, I work as a night auditor for a rather large international chain of hotels. It's a good job, boring and easy, and the pay is far from mediocre for a college student. When I got in tonight, the second shift guys told me to be on the lookout for a man connected to a stabbing earlier in the day. I shrugged it off. The hotel was located in a rather safe spot, the intersection between the city and county patrol, so you would see a marked car just about every hour. I wasn't worried about Stabby McStab running into my hotel. I guess that's how most of these start off, isn't it? I wasn't worried about it. Yeah, well, maybe I should have given a bit more thought to my fellow associate's warning. About 2 hours ago, I was enjoying the isolation of the back room. The door was locked. The CCTV was on one screen, and Netflix was on the other. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Phil Coulson and the true OG of the Avengers. When all of a sudden, from the corner of my eye, I see somebody walk in front of camera 3, which is located at the front door. Great. Customer. No, I wish. Backstory, the dude was drunk, wrecked his car, called a tow truck, and stabbed the driver in the neck for some reason. Probably meth or something, to be honest, I don't know. Guy proceeded to evade police for well over 30 minutes in a gigantic pink tow truck. The company's owner has cancer. So I reckon he parked it somewhere nearby and decided, a hotel is a great place to lay low. I met him at the front desk, sweating bullets but maintaining my cool a tad bit. I let the guy check in even though his card declined, gave him his room key and watched him go up on the cameras until I was sure he was in the room. Police are standing in the lobby as I type this. Dude got arrested. These dudes are just enjoying hotel coffee, and I had the kitchen crew whip him up some muffins as we're out of donuts. This is my first time posting here or anywhere about this incident, so I apologize if details get a little bit confusing, but I will try my best to make it as concise as possible. This happened a few months ago to my friends and me. We're university students in Cape Town, South Africa, so when we aren't trying to just get through the semester, we like to let our habits get the better of us and go out for drinks. This night, we had just finished what felt like an extra long day at university and decided to head to a bar about 5 minutes from campus for some much needed stress relief. The evening was going well. Although a bit slow, it was enjoyable with everyone having a drink and getting a bit restless. So me, being one of the more outgoing ones in the group, I suggested that we head to the pool bar not far from where we were. Everybody agrees and we go to get our stuff. We all jump in my car and get to the bar. But being a Thursday night, parking was scarce. I finally managed to find a spot about a block away from the bar, but in a secluded side street. I should also mention that this bar is one of the sketchier parts of town, but is normally quite safe due to the amount of nightlife associated with being so close to a university. We walked to the bar and no one really felt uneasy, nor did anything happen to make us feel that way, which was quite surprising. After a few hours of some pool and just relaxing, we decided it was time to grab dinner before restaurants close. As being in South Africa means that most restaurants, even fast food, close really early at around 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. to comply with the curfew. We decided to stop at the pizza place below the bar to grab some food before we all decided what the plan for the end of the night was. So, because our group was so large and the pizza place was so small, we decided to have those getting food go inside while the others who didn't would just wait outside on the street. This was an easy decision, as the pizza place had a massive open window with a built-on counter, so we could still all talk to each other. This is where things started getting a little weird. While we were waiting for our friends inside the pizza place to come out, this massive white van pulls up past us and stops. The driver wasn't an intimidating looking dude. He was very skinny and looked to be about average height with shoulder-length blonde hair. Pretty standard looking person for the kind of area that we were in. He calls me and asks if I think this van would fit in a parking spot just behind him. For perspective, this parking spot could probably fit like a small hatchback maybe. This dude is driving a full-size long panel van. This makes me kind of uneasy, as I thought that as a driver of a car, you should know where your car can definitely not fit, and this was one of them. I explained to him that I didn't think it was worth attempting. He responds, telling me that he has faith in his ability and I should come stand behind the van to direct him in. This gives me major red flags, and after a few back and forths, he just pulls the emergency brake and sits and stares at my friends and me for what felt like an eternity. He then thanked us and drove off. This sparks my friends to come outside from the pizza place as they just saw what happened and were very confused. We were all kind of weirded out, but thinking nothing of it, and everyone gets their pizza. And we try to decide what the plan is for the last hour or two we have before curfew cuts things short. Most of us decide this is where the night is going to end, as we're all kind of weirded out by the guy in the van. A few others decide they were going to stay and just Uber home a little bit later in the evening. With our group cut down to 4, we decided to walk back to the car and just head home. When we left the pizza place, a homeless person called us and was insisting that we had nothing to worry about with the guy in the van, which didn't help with anyone's nerves. We then decided to head to the car, but as soon as we turned the corner to approach the side street where the car was parked, we saw the van man again. This time he was not quite so happy as he seemed in his encounter earlier. I made a cheeky comment about him finally finding a parking spot he could fit in while we were walking past each other, and he just stared at my friends and me, not breaking eye contact even when we passed him. I turned around to see if he was still looking. He was, but as we turned the corner of the side street with the car, I saw it and my heart sank. The van was horribly parked half on and off of the sidewalk, the back door slightly open. Upon seeing this, I turn around and see Van Man is now walking towards us, but he said something that confused me at first, but immediately made sense after. He said, "Hey, please just watch my car," which confused me, but when he said that, 4 men sat up from leaning on the wall next to it and began following us. My friends and I were slightly ahead of them, so we were trying to discuss the game plan, because it was obvious if we did nothing, something horrible might happen. My friends start walking faster and I remain at the same speed, frantically searching my pockets for my car keys, all while shouting at my friends to wait up and asking what the rush was. All in hopes the guys behind us, who were gaining on us, were oblivious to us, knowing that they had sinister intentions. As soon as the car came into view, we booked it, jumped in and drove away, but we were only seconds from not being that lucky. After locking the car doors, I saw the men surrounding the car. I managed to get us out, and looking back in the mirror, I saw a 5th man by the van at the bottom of the street. I still have no idea what their intentions were that night. It was to rob us, or just beat us up or worse. I don't really like to think about how lucky we were that night. I ask that when you are out, no matter how innocent an interaction with somebody can seem, to just be cautious. Always pay attention to the little things. So to the man in the van my friends and I saw that night, can we please not meet again?